This is the Southeastern North Carolina Radio Reading Service, a United Way partner agency. We welcome you to its program entitled Off the Bookshelf. Your reader is Hiba Had, and I will be reading The Kite Runner by Khalid Hussein. Last time we reached the part when Amir and his father moved to the U.S. after the Russian invasion. Several years passed and Amir graduated from high school. After dinner, Baba took me to a bar across the street from the restaurant. The place was dim, and the acrid smell of beer I'd always disliked permeated the walls. Men in baseball caps and tank tops played pool, clouds of cigarette smoke hovering over the green tables, swirling in the fluorescent light. We drew looks, Baba in the brown suit and me, pleated slacks and sports jacket. We took a seat at the bar next to an old man, his leathery face sickly in the blue glow of the Michelob sign overhead. Baba lit a cigarette and ordered us beers. "Tonight, I'm too much happy," he announced to no one and everyone. Tonight, I'm drinking with my son, and one, please, for my friend," he said, patting the old man on the back. The old fellow tipped his hat and smiled. He had no aperitif. Baba finished his beer in 3 gulps and ordered another. He had 3 before I forced myself to drink a quarter of mine. By then, he had bought the old man a scotch and treated a foursome of pool players to a pitcher of Budweiser. Men shook his hand and clapped him on the back. They drank to him. Someone lit his cigarette. Baba loosened his tie and gave the old man a handful of quarters. He pointed to a jukebox. "Tell him to play his favorite songs," he said to me. The old man nodded and gave Baba a salute. Soon, country music was blaring, and just like that, Baba had started the party. At one point, Baba stood, raised his beer, spilling it on the sawdust floor, and yelled, "F the Russia." The bar's laughter, then its full-throated echo followed. Baba bought another round of pitchers for everyone. When we left, everyone was sad to see him go. Kabul, Peshawar, Hayward, same old Baba, I thought, smiling. I drove us home in Baba's old ochre yellow Buick Century. Baba dozed off on the way, snoring like a jackhammer. I smelled tobacco on him and alcohol, sweet and pungent. But he sat up when I stopped the car and said in a hoarse voice, "Keep driving to the end of the block." "Why, Baba?" "Just go." He had me park at the south end of the street. He reached in his coat pocket and handed me a set of keys. There," he said, pointing to the car in front of us. It was an old model Ford, long and wide, a dark color. I couldn't discern in the moonlight. "It needs painting, and I have one of the guys at the station put in new shocks, but it runs." I took the keys, stunned. I looked from him to the car. "You'll need it to go to college," he said. I took his hand in mine, squeezed it. My eyes were tearing over, and I was glad for the shadows that hid our faces. "Thank you, Baba." We got out and sat inside the Ford. It was a Grand Torino, navy blue. Baba said. I drove it around the block, testing the brakes, the radio, the turn signals. I parked it in the lot of our apartment building and shut off the engine. "Tashakkur, Babajan," I said. I wanted to say more, to tell him how touched I was by this act of kindness, how much I appreciated all that he's done for me, all that he still is doing. But I knew I'd embarrass him. "Tashakkur," I repeated instead. He smiled and leaned back against the headrest, his forehead almost touching the ceiling. He didn't say anything, just sat in the dark, listened to the ting-ting of the engine cooling, the wail of the siren in the distance. Then Baba rolled his head towards me. "I wish Hassan had been with us today," he said. A pair of steel hands closed around my windpipe, and the sound of Hassan's name at the sounds of Hassan's name. I rolled down the window, waited for the steel hands to loosen their grip. I would enroll in junior college class in the fall. I took Bubba the day after graduation. He was drinking cold black tea and chewing cardamom seeds, his personal trusted antidote for hangover headaches. I think I'll major in English, I said. I winced inside, waiting for his reply. English? Creative writing. He considered. Statistic. Stories, you mean? You make up stories. I looked down at my feet. Will you pay for that? Making up stories. If you're good, I said. And if you get discovered. How likely is that, getting discovered? It happens, I said. He nodded. And what will you do while you wait to get good and get discovered? How will you earn money? If you marry, how will you support your khana? Your wife. I couldn't lift my eyes to meet his. I'd find a job. Oh, he said. Wah wah. So if I understand, you've studied several years to earn a degree, then you get a chatty job like mine, one you could just easily land today, on the small chance that your degree might someday help you get discovered. He took a deep breath and sipped his tea, grunted something about medical school, law school, and real work. My cheeks burned, and guilt coursed through me, the guilt of indulging myself at the expense of his ulcer, his black fingernails and aching wrists. But I would stand my ground, I decided. I didn't want to sacrifice for Bubba anymore. The last time I had done that, I had damned myself. Bubba sighed, and this time tossed a whole handful of cardamom seeds in his mouth. Sometimes I got behind the wheel of my Ford, rolled down the windows, and drove for hours from the East Bay to the South Bay, up the peninsula and back. I drove through the grids of cottonwood-lined streets in our Fremont neighborhood, where people who'd never shaken hands with kings lived in shabby, flat one-story houses with barred windows, where old cars like mine dripped oil on blacktop driveways. Pencil gray chain link fences closed off the backyards in our neighborhood. Toys, bald tires, and beer bottles with peeling labels littered unkempt front lawns. I drove past tree shades, parks that smelled like bark, past strip malls big enough to hold 5 simultaneous Buzkashi tournaments. I drove the Tornado up the hill of Los Altos, idling past estates with picture windows and silver lions guarding the road iron gates, homes with Sherab Mount fountains lining the manicured walkways with no Ford Torinos in driveways, homes that made Baba's house in Wazir Akbar Khan look like a servant's hut. I'd get up early some Saturday morning and drive south on Highway 17, push the Ford up the winding road through the mountains to Santa Cruz. I would park by the old lighthouse and wait for the sunrise, sit in my car and watch the fog rolling in front of the sea. In Afghanistan, I had only seen the ocean at the cinema, sitting in the dark next to Hassan. I had always wondered if it was true that what I dread, the sea, air smelled like salt. I used to tell Hassan that someday we'd walk on a strip of seaweed-strewn beach, sink our feet in the sand, and watch the water recede from our toes. The first time I saw the Pacific, I almost cried. It was as vast and blue as the oceans on the movie screens of my childhood. Sometimes in the early evening, I parked the car and walked up the freeway, overpass. My face pressed against the fence. I tried to count the blinking red tail lights inching along, stretching as far as my eyes could see. BMWs, Porsches, cars I'd never seen in Kabul, where most people drove Russian Volgas. or Odopels or Iranian pythons. Almost 2 years had passed since we had arrived in the US, and I was still marveling at the size of this country, its vastness. Beyond every freeway lay another freeway, beyond every city another city. Another city hills beyond mountains, and mountains beyond hills, and beyond those, more cities and more people. Long before the Rusi army marched into Afghanistan, long before villages were burned and schools destroyed, long before mines were planted like seeds of death and children buried in rock-paved graves, Kabul had become a city of ghosts for me, a city of hair-lipped ghosts. America was different. America was a river, roaring along, unmindful of the past. I could wade into this river, let my sins drown into the bottom, let the waters carry me someplace far, someplace with no ghosts, no memories, no sins. If for nothing else for that, I embraced America. The following summer, the summer of 1984, the summer I turned 21, Baba sold his Buick and bought a dilapidated 71 Volkswagen bus for $550 from an old Afghan acquaintance who'd been a high school science teacher in Kabul. The neighbors had started the afternoon the bus puttered up the street and farted its way across our lot. Baba cut the engine and let the bus roll silently in our designated spot. We sank in our seats, laughed until tears rolled down our cheeks, and more important, until we were sure the neighbors weren't watching anymore. The bus was a sad carcass of rusted metal, shattered windows, replaced with the black garbage bags, bulging tires, and upholstery shredded down the springs. But the old teacher had reassured Baba that the engine and transmission were sound, and on that account the man hadn't lied. On Saturday, Baba woke up at dawn. As he dressed, I scanned the classy fields in the local papers and circled the garage sale ads. We mapped our route: Fremont, Union City, Newark, and the Hayward first, then San Jose, Milpitas, Sunnyvale, and Campbell, if time permitted. Baba drove the bus, sipping hot tea from the thermos, and I navigated. We stopped at garage sales and bought knickknacks that people no longer wanted. We haggled over old sewing machines, one-eyed Barbie dolls, wooden tennis rackets, guitars with missing strings, and old Electrolux vacuum cleaners. By mid-afternoon, we'd filled the back of the VW bus with used goods. Then, early Sunday mornings, we drove to San Jose flea market of Berryessa, rented a spot, and sold the junk for a small profit. A Chicago record that we bought for a quarter that day before might go for $1 or $4 for a set of 5. A ramshackle Singer sewing machine purchased for $10 might, after some bargaining, bring in $25. By that summer, Afghan families were working an entire section of the San Jose flea market. Afghan music played in the aisles of the used goods section. There was an unspoken code of behavior among Afghans at the flea market. You greeted the guy across the aisle, you invited him for a bite of potato bolani or a little kabuli, and you chatted. You offered tasali, condolences, for the death of a parent, congratulated the birth of children, and shook your head mirthfully when the conversation turned to Afghan and the Russians, which it inevitably did. But you avoided the topic of Saturday, because it might turn out that the fellow across the aisle isn't the guy you'd nearly blindsided at the freeway exit yesterday in order to beat him with a promising garage sale. The only thing that flowed more than tea in those aisles was Afghan gossip. The flea market was where you sipped green tea with almond kolchas and learned whose daughter had broken off an engagement and run off with her American boyfriend, who used to be Parshami, a communist in Kabul, and who had bought a house with under-the-table money while still on welfare. Tea, politics, and scandal, the ingredients of an Afghan Sunday at the flea market. I ran the stand sometimes as Baba sauntered down the aisle, hands respectfully pressed to his chest, greeting people he knew from Kabul, mechanics and tailors selling hand-me-down wool coats and scraped bicycle helmets, alongside former ambassadors, out-of-work surgeons, and university professors. One early Sunday morning in July 1984, while Baba set up, I bought 2 cups of coffee from the concession stand and returned to find Baba talking to an older, distinguished-looking man. I put the cups on the rear bumper of the bus, next to a Reagan Bush 484 sticker. Amir, Baba said, motioning me over. This is General Sahib, Mr. Iqbal Tahiri. He was a decorated general in Kabul. He worked for the Ministry of Defense. Tahiri. Why did that name sound familiar? The general laughed like a man used to attending formal parties where he'd laughed on cue at the minor jokes of important people. He had wispy silver-gray hair combed back from his smooth, tan forehead, and tufts of white in his bushy eyebrows. He smelled like cologne and wore an iron gray 3-piece suit, shining from too many pressings. The gold chain of a pocket watch dangled from his vest. Such a lofty introduction, he said, his voice deep and cultured. Salam, Basham. Hello, my child. Salam, General Sahib, I said, shaking his hands. His thin hands belied a firm grip, as if steel hid beneath the moisturized skin. Amir's going to be a great writer, Baba said. I did a double take at him at this. He had finished his first year of college, earned A's in all his courses. Junior college, I corrected him. Mashallah, General Tahiri said. Will you be writing about our country, history perhaps, economics? I write fiction, I said, thinking of the dozen or so short stories I had written in the leather-bound notebook Rahim Khan had given me, wondering why I was suddenly embarrassed by them in this man's presence. Ah, a storyteller, the general said. Well, people need stories to divert themselves at difficult times like this. He put his hand on Baba's shoulder and turned to me. Speaking of stories, your father and I hunted pheasant together one summer in Jalalabad, he said. It was a marvelous time. If I recall correctly, your father's eyes proven as keen in the hunt as it had in business. Baba kicked a wooden tennis racket on our tarpaulin, spread with the toe of his foot. Some business. General Tahiri managed a simultaneously sad and polite smile, heaved a sigh, and gently patted Baba's shoulder. Zendagi Migzala, he said, life goes on. He turned his eyes to me. We Afghans are prone to a considerable degree of exaggeration, Basham, and I have heard many men foolishly labeled great, but your father had a distinction of belonging to a minority who truly deserves the label. This little speech sounded to me the way his suit looked, often used and unnaturally shiny. You're flattering me, Baba said. I'm not, the general said, tilting his head sideways and pressing his hand on his chest to convey humility. Boys and girls must know the legacy of their fathers. He turned to me. Do you appreciate your father, Basham? Do you really appreciate him? Balai, General Sahib, I do, I said, wishing he had not called me my child. Then congratulations. You're already halfway to being a man, he said, with no trace of humor, no irony, no compliment. The compliment of the casually arrogant. Padajan, you forgot your tea. A young woman's voice. She was standing behind us, a slim-hipped beauty with velvety coal-black hair, an open thermos, and styrofoam cup in her hand. I blinked, my heart quickening. She had thick black eyebrows that touched in the middle like an arched wings of a flying bird, and the gracefully hooked nose of a princess from old Persia, maybe that of Tahmina, Rustam's wife and Sohrab's mother from the Shahnama. Her eyes, walnut brown and shaded by fan lashes, met mine, held for a moment, flew away. You're so kind, my dear, General Tahiri said. He took the cup from her before she turned to go. I saw she had a brown, sickle-shaped birthmark on the smooth skin just above her left jawline. She walked to a dull gray van 2 aisles away and put the thermos aside inside. Her hair spilled to one side when she kneeled amid boxes of old records and paperbacks. My daughter, Soraya Jan, General Tahiri said. He took a deep breath like a man eager to change the subject and checked his gold pocket watch. Well, time to go and set up. He and Baba kissed on the cheek, and he shook my hand with both of his. Best of luck with the writing, he said. Looked me in the eye. His pale blue eyes revealed nothing of the thoughts behind them. For the rest of the day, I fought the urge to look towards the grey van. It came to me on our way home. Tahiri. I knew I heard that name before. Wasn't there some story floating about Tahiri's daughter? I said to Baba, trying to sound casual. You know me, Baba said, inching the bus along the queue, exiting the flea market. Talk turns to gossip and I walk away. But there wasn't there? I said. Why do you ask? He looked at me coyly. I shrugged and fought back a smile. Just curious, Baba. Really, is that all? He said, his eyes playful, lingering on me. Has she made an impression on you? I rolled my eyes. Please, Baba. He smiled and swung the bus on the flea market. We headed for Highway 680. We drove in silence for a while. All I've heard is that there was a man once and things didn't go well. He said discreetly, like he disclosed to me that she had breast cancer. I hear she's a decent girl, hardworking and kind, but no suitors have knocked on the general's doors since. Baba sighed. It may be unfair, but what happens in a few days, sometimes even a single day can change the course of a whole lifetime, Amir, he said, lying awake in bed that night. I thought of Soraya Tahiri's sickle-shaped birthmark, her gently hooked nose, the way her luminous eyes had fleetingly held mine. My heart stuttered at the thought of her, Soraya Tahiri, my swap-mate princess. Chapter 12. In Afghanistan, Yelda is the first night of the month of Jadi, the first night of winter, and the longest night of the year. As was the tradition, Hassan and I used to stay up late, our feet tucked under the kursi, while Ali tossed apple skin into the stove and told us ancient tales of sultans and thieves to pass that longest of nights. It was from Ali that I learned the lore of Yelda, that bedeviled moths flung themselves at candle flames, and wolves climbed mountains looking for the sun. Ali swore that if you ate watermelon the night of Yelda, you wouldn't get thirsty the coming summer. When I was older, I read in my poetry books that Yelda was the starless night tormented lovers kept fiber, enduring the endless dark, waiting for the sun to rise to bring with it their beloved ones. After I met Soraya Tahiri, every night of the week became a Yelda for me. And when Sunday morning came, I rose from the bed, Soraya Tahiri's brown eyes, face, already in my head. In Baba's bus, I counted the miles until I'd see her sitting barefoot, arranging cardboard boxes of yellowed encyclopedias, her heels white against the asphalt, silver bracelets jingling around her slender wrists. I think of the shadow her hair cast on the ground when it slid off her back and hung down in a velvet curtain. Soraya, spoke me, princess. The morning sun to my anthem. When I was, I invented excuses to stroll down the aisle, which Baba acknowledged with a playful smirk, and past the Tahiri stand. I would wave at the general perpetually dressed in his shiny, overpressed grey suit, and he would wave back. Sometimes he'd get up from his director's chair, and we'd make a small talk about my writing, the war, the day's bargains. And I'd have to well my eyes not to peel away, not to wander to where Soraya had sat reading the paperback. The general and I would say our goodbyes, and I tried not to slouch as I walked away. Sometimes she sat alone, the general off to some other row to socialize, and I would walk by pretending not to know her, but dying to. Sometimes she was there, and a portly middle-aged woman with pale skin and dyed red hair. I promised myself that I would talk to her before the summer was over, but schools reopened. The leaves reddened, yellowed, and fell. The rains of winter swept in and wakened Baba's joints. Baby leaves sprouted once more, and I still hadn't had the heart it did to even look her in the eye. The spring quarter ended in late May 1985. I aced all of my general education classes, which was a minor miracle given how I'd sit in lectures and think of the soft hook of Soraya's nose. Then one sweltering Sunday that summer, Baba and I were at the flea market sitting at our booth, fanning our faces with the newspapers. Despite the sun bearing down like a branding iron, the market was crowded that day, and sales had been strong. It was only 12:30, but we already made $160. I got up, stretched, and asked Baba if he wanted Coke. He said he'd love one. Be careful, Amir, he said as I began to walk. Of what, Baba? I'm not an ahmaq, so don't play stupid with me. I don't know what you're talking about. Remember this, Baba said, pointing at me. The man is a Pashtun, to the root. He has nang and namus, honor and pride, the tenets of Pashtun man, especially when it comes to the chastity of a wife or a daughter. I'm only going to get us drinks. Just don't embarrass me. That's all I ask. I won't. God, Baba. Baba lit a cigarette and started fanning himself again. I walked towards the concession booth initially and turned left at the t-shirt stand where for $5 you can have the face of Jesus, Elvis, Jim Morrison, or all three pressed on a white vinyl t-shirt. Mariachi music played overhead, and I smelled pickles and grilled meat. I spotted the Tahiri's gray van 2 rows from ours, next to a kiosk selling mango on a stick. She was alone, reading. White ankle-length summer dress today. Open-toed sandals. Hair pulled back and crowned with a tulip-shaped bond. I meant to simply walk by again, and I thought I had, except suddenly I was standing at the edge of the Tahiri's white tablecloth, staring at Soraya across curling irons and old neckties. She looked up. Salam, I said. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you. Salam. Is General Sahab here today? I said. My ears were burning. I couldn't bring myself to look to her in the eye. He went that way, she said, pointing to the right. The bracelet slipped down to her elbow, silver against olive. Will you tell him I stopped by to pay my respects? I said. I will. Thank you, I said. Oh, my name's Amir, in case you needed to know, so you can tell him that I stopped by to pay my respects. Yes. I shifted on my feet, cleared my throat. I'll go now. Sorry to have disturbed you. Nay, you didn't, she said. Oh, good. I tipped my head and gave her a half smile. I'll go now. Hadn't I said that already? Khuda Hafiz. Khuda Hafiz. I began to walk, stopped and turned. I said it before I had a chance to lose my nerve. Can I ask you what you're reading? She blinked. I held my breath. Suddenly I felt the collective eyes of the flea market everyone shift to us. I imagined a hush falling, lips stopping in mid-sentence, heads turning, eyes narrowing with keen interest. What was this? Up to that point, our encounter could have been interpreted as a respectful inquiry, one man asking for the whereabouts of another man. But I asked her a question, and if she answered, we'd be chatting. And me, a mere single young man, and she, an unwed young woman, with a history, no less. This was teetering dangerously on the verge of gossip material, and that best kind of it. Poison tongues would flap, and she would bear the brunt of that poison, not me. I was fully aware of the Afghan double standard that favored my gender. Not did you see him chatting with her, but why did you see how she couldn't let him go? By Afghan standards, my question had been bold. With it, I had bared myself, and left little doubt as to my interest in her. But I was a man, and all I had risked was a bruised ego. Bruises healed, reputations did not. Would she take my dare? She turned the book to the cover, faced me. Wuthering Heights. Have you read it? She said. I nodded. I could feel the pulsating beat of my heart behind my eyes. It's a sad story. Sad stories make good books, she said. They do. I heard you right. How did she know? I wondered if her father had told her. Maybe she had asked him. I immediately dismissed both scenarios as absurd. Fathers and sons could freely talk about women, but no Afghan girl, no decent and muhtaram Afghan girl, at least queried her father about a young man. And no father, especially a Pashtun with Nang and Namus, would discuss Amir with his daughter. Not unless the fellow in question was a suitor who had done the honorable thing and sent his father to knock the door. Incredibly, I heard myself say, "Would you like to read one of my stories?" "I would like that," she said. I sensed an unease in her now, so I saw it in the way her eyes began to flick side to side, maybe checking for the general. I wondered what he would say if he found me speaking for such an inappropriate length of time with his daughter. "Maybe I'll bring you one someday," I said. I was about to say more when the woman I'd seen on occasion with Soraya came walking up the aisle. She was carrying a plastic bag full of fruit. When she saw us, her eyes bounced from me to Soraya and back. She smiled. "Amir John, good to see you," she said, unloading the bag on the tablecloth. Her brow glistened with the sheen of sweat, her red hair coiffed like helmet, glaring in the sunlight. I could see bits of her scalp where the hair had thinned. She had small green eyes buried in a capuchon face, capped teeth, and little fingers like sausages. A golden Allah rested on her cheek, the chain buried under the skin tags and folds of her neck. "I am Jamila, Soraya John's mother." "Salam, Khala Jan," I said, embarrassed, as I often was around Afghans, that she knew me and I had no idea who she was. "How's your father?" she said. "He's well, thank you. You know your grandfather, Rasi Sahib, the judge. Now his uncle and my grandfather were cousins, she said. So you see, we're related. She smiled a cat-toothed smile, and I noticed the right side of her mouth drooping a little. Her eyes moved between Suraya and me again. I'd asked Baba once why General Tahir's daughter hadn't married yet. No suitors, Baba said. No suitable suitors, he amended. But he wouldn't say more. Baba knew how lethal idle talk could prove to a young woman's prospects of marrying well. Afghan men, especially those with reputable families, were fickle creatures. A whisper here, an intuition there, and they fled like startled birds. So weddings had to come and go, and no one had sung Ahesta Boro for Suraya. No one had painted her palms with henna. No one had held the Quran over her headdress, and it had been General Tahiri who danced with her at every wedding. And now, this woman, this mother, with her heart breakingly eager, crooked smile, and the barely veiled hope in her eyes, I cringed a little at the position of power I'd been granted, and all because I won at the genetic lottery that had determined my sex. I could never read the thoughts in the general's eyes, but I knew this much about his wife. As if I was going to have an adversary in this, whatever this was, it would not be her. Sit down, Amir John, she said. Should I get in a chair, Hashim, and wash one of those peaches? They're sweet and fresh. Nay, thank you, I said. I should get going. My father's waiting. Oh, Khanum Tahiri said, clearly impressed that I'd done a polite thing and declined her offer. Then, here, at least have this. She threw a handful of kiwis and a few peaches into a paper bag and insisted I take them. Carry my salam to your father and come back to see us again. I would, thank you, Khalajan, I said. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Suraya looking away. I thought you were getting to cokes, Baba said, taking the bags of peaches from me. He was looking at me simultaneously serious and in a playful way. I began to make something up, but he bit into a peach and waved his hand. Don't bother, Amir. Just remember what I said. That night in bed, I thought of the way dappled sunlight and had danced in Suraya's eyes of the delicate hollows above her collarbone. I replayed our conversation over and over in my head. Had she said I heard you right, or I heard you were righter? Which was it? I tossed in my sheets and stared at the ceiling, dismayed at the thought of 6 labor, the people we knew, her arthritis. Undoubtedly, she had noticed that my appearances always coincided with her husband's absences, but she never let on. Oh, you just missed our kaka, she said. I actually liked it when Khanum Tahiri was there, not just because of her amiable ways. Suraya was more relaxed, more talkative with her mother around, as if her presence legitimized whatever was happening between us, though certainly not to the same degree that the general would have. Khanum Tahiri's chaperoning made our meetings, if not gossip-proof, then less gossip-worthy, even if her borderline fawning on me clearly embarrassed Suraya. One day, Suraya and I were alone at their booth, talking. She was telling me about school, how she was working on her general education classes at Ohlone Junior College in Fremont. What will you major in? I want to be a teacher, she said. Really? Why? I've always wanted to. When we lived in Virginia, I became ESL certified, and now I teach at the public library one night a week. My mother was a teacher, too. She taught Farsi and history in Zarghuna High School for girls in Kabul. A pot-bellied man in a deerstalker hat offered $3 for a $5 set of candlesticks, and Soraya let him have it. She dropped the money in a little candy box by her feet. She looked at me shyly. "I want to tell you a story," she said, "but I'm a little embarrassed about it." "Tell me. It's kind of silly. Please tell me." She laughed. "Well, when I was in 4th grade in Kabul, my father hired a woman named Ziba to help around the house. She had a sister in Iran, in Mashhad, and since Ziba was illiterate, she'd ask me to write her sister letters once in a while. And when the sister replied, I'd read the letter to Ziba. One day I asked her if she'd like to learn to write. She gave me the big smile, crinkling her eyes, and said she'd like that very much. So we'd sit in the kitchen table after I was done with my own schoolwork, and I'd reach her alif be. I remember looking up sometimes in the middle of homework and seeing Ziba in the kitchen, stirring meat in the pressure cooker. Then sitting down with a pencil to do alphabet homework I'd assigned to her the night before. Anyway, within a year, Ziba could read children books. We sat in the yard and she'd read to me the tales of Dara and Sara, so slowly but correctly. She started calling me Mu'allim Suraya, Teacher Suraya. She laughed again. I know it sounds childhood, but the first time Ziba wrote her own name, I knew there was nothing else I'd wanted to be but a teacher. I was so proud of her, and I felt I'd done something really worthwhile, you know. Yes, I lied. I thought of how I used my literacy to ridicule Hassan, how I had teased him about big words he didn't know. My father wants me to go to law school. My mother always throwing hints about medical school, but I'm going to be a teacher. Doesn't pay much here, but it's what I want. My mother was a teacher too, I said. I know, she said. My mother told me. Then her face denied with a blush at what she had blurted, at the implication of her answer that a mere conversation took place between them and when I wasn't there. I took an enormous effort to stop myself from smiling. I brought you something. I fished the roll of stapled pages from the back of my pocket. As promised, I handed her one of the short stories. Oh, you remembered, she said, actually beaming. Thank you. I barely had time to register that she'd been addressed me with "tu" for the first time, and not the formal Shoma, because suddenly her smile vanished, the color dropped from her face, and her eyes fixed on something behind me. I turned around, came face to face with General Tahir. "I meet John, our aspiring storyteller. What a pleasure," he said, he was smiling thinly. "Salam, General Sahib," I said through heavy lips. He moved past me, towards the booth. "What a wonderful day, is it, Nay?" he said, thumb hooked in the breast pocket of his vest, the other hand extended towards Suraya. She gave him the pages. "They say it will rain this week. Hard to believe, isn't it?" He dropped the rolled pages in the garbage can, turned to me, and gently put a hand on my shoulder. We took a few steps together. "You know, Basham, I have grown rather fond of you. You're a decent boy. I really believe that, but," he said and waved a hand, "but decent boys need reminding sometimes. And it's my duty to remind you that you're among peers in the flea market." He stopped, his expressionless eyes borne to mine. "You see, everyone here's a storyteller," he smiled, revealing perfectly even teeth. "Do pass my respects to your father and me, John." He dropped his hand, smiled again. "What's wrong?" Baba said. He was taking an elderly woman's money for a rocking horse. "Nothing," I said. I sat down on the old TV set. Then I told him anyway. "Ah, Amir," he sighed. As it turned out, I didn't get to brood too much over what had happened, because later that week, Baba caught a cold. It started with a hackling cough on the sniffles. He got over the sniffles, but the cough persisted. He'd hack into his handkerchief, stow it in his pocket. I kept after him. I get it checked, but he'd wave me away. He hated doctors and hospitals. To my knowledge, the only time Baba had ever gone to a doctor was the time he'd caught malaria in India. Then 2 weeks later, I caught him coughing a wad of blood-stained phlegm into the toilet. How long have you been doing that? I said. What's for dinner? He said. I'm taking you to the doctor. Even though Baba was manager at the gas station, the owner hadn't offered him health insurance, and Baba in his recklessness hadn't insisted so. So I took him to the country hospital in San Jose. The sallow, puffed-eyed doctor who saw us introduced himself as a second-year resident. He looked younger than you and sicker than me, Baba grumbled. The resident sent us down for a chest x-ray. When the nurse called us back in, the resident was filling out a form. Take this form to the front desk, he said, scribbling quickly. What is it? I asked. A referral? Scribble, scribble. For what? Pulmonary clinic. What's that? He gave me a quick glance, pushed up his glasses, began scribbling again. He's got a spot in his right lung. I want them to check it out. A spot? I said, the room suddenly too small. Cancer? Baba added casually. Possible. It's suspicious anyway. The doctor muttered. Can you tell us more? I asked. No need. Not really. Need a CAT scan first, then see the lung doctor. He handed me the referral form. You said your father smokes, right? Yes, he nodded, looked from me to Baba and back again. They'll call you within 2 weeks. I wanted to ask him how I was supposed to live with that word suspicious for 2 whole weeks. How was I supposed to eat, work, study? How could he send me home with that word? I took the form and turned it in. That night, I waited until Baba fell asleep and then folded the blanket. I used it as a prayer rug. Bowing my head to the ground, I recited half-forgotten verses from the Quran verses the Mullah had made us commit to memory in Kabul, and now asked for kindness from a God I wasn't sure existed. I envied the Mullah now, envied his faith and certainty. 2 weeks passed, no one called, and when I called them, they told me they the referral. Dr. Schneider was going well until Baba had asked him where he was from. Dr. Schneider said Russia. Baba lost it. Excuse us, doctor, I said, pulling Baba aside. Dr. Schneider smiled and stood back, stethoscope still in hand. Baba, I read Dr. Schneider's biography in the waiting room. He was born in Michigan. Michigan, he's American. A lot of Americans that you and I will ever be. A lot more American that you and I will ever be. I don't care where he was born. He's Russian, Baba said, grimacing like it's like a dirty word. His parents were Rusi. His grandparents were Rusi. I swear on my mother's face I'll break his arm if he tries to touch me. Dr. Schneider's parents fled from Shawari. Didn't you see? They escaped. But Baba would hear none of it. Sometimes I think he only loved as much as his late wife was Afghanistan, his late country. I almost screamed with frustration. Instead, I sighed and turned to Dr. Schneider. I'm sorry, doctor, this isn't going to work out. The next pulmonologist, Dr. Amani, was an Iranian, and Baba approved. Dr. Amani was a soft-spoken man with a crooked mustache and a mane of gray hair. He told us that he had reviewed the CAT scan results and that he would perform a procedure called bronchoscopy to get a piece of the lung mass for pathology. He scheduled it for the following week. I thanked him, and I helped Baba out of the office, thinking that now I had to live a whole week with the new word, mass, an even more ominous word than suspicious. I wished Suraya was there with me. It turned out that, like Saratan, cancer had many names. It turned out, like Satan, cancer had many names. Baba was called Oat-cell carcinoma, advanced, inoperable. Baba asked Dr. Amani for a prognosis. Dr. Amani bit his lip, used the word grave. There is chemotherapy, of course, he said, but it would only be palliative. What does that mean? Baba said. Dr. Amani sighed. It means it wouldn't change the outcome, just prolong it. That's a clear answer, Dr. Amani. Thank you for that, Baba said. But no chemo medication for me. He had the same resolved look on his face as the day he dropped the stack of food stamps on Mrs. Dobbins' desk. But Baba, don't you challenge me in public, Amir, ever. Who do you think you are? The rain General Tahiri had spoken about at the flea market was a few weeks late, but then we stopped out of Dr. Amani's office, passing cars sprayed grimy water onto the sidewalks. Baba lit a cigarette. He smoked all the way to the car and all the way home. As he was slipping the key into the lobby door, I said, I wish you'd give the chemo a chance, Baba. Baba poked the keys, pulled me out of the rain and under the building's striped awning. He kneaded me on the chest with the hand holding the cigarette. Bas, I've made my decision. What about me, Baba? What am I supposed to do? I said, my eyes welling up. A look of disgust swept across his rain-soaked face. It was the same look he had given me as a kid. I'd fall, scrap my knees, and cry. It was the crying that brought it on then. The crying that brought it on now. You're 22 years old, Amir, a grown man. You opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, reconsidered. Above us, rain drummed on the canvas awning. What's going to happen to you, you say? All those years. That's what I was trying to teach you. How to never have to ask that question. He opened the door, turned back to me. And one more thing. No one finds about this. You hear me? No one. I don't want anyone's sympathy. Then he disappeared into the dim lobby. He chain-smoked the rest of that day in front of the TV. I didn't know what or whom he was defying. Me, Dr. Amani, or maybe the God he had never believed in. For a while, even cancer couldn't keep Baba from the flea market. We made our garage sale treks on Saturdays, Baba the driver and me the navigator, and set up our display on Sundays. Brass lamps, baseball gloves, ski jackets with broken zippers. Baba greeted acquaintances from the old country, and I haggled with buyers over $1 or $2, like any of it mattered. Like the day I would become an orphanage was inching closer with each closing of shop. Sometimes General Tahiri and his wife strolled by. The general over the diplomat greeted me with a smile and his two-handed shake, but there was a new reticence to Khayyum Tahiri's demeanor, a reticence broken only by her secret. Droopy smiled and furtive. Apologetic looks she cast my way when general attention was engaged somewhere else. I remember the period as a time of many firsts. The first time I heard Bubba moan in the bathroom. The first time I found blood on his pillow. In over 3 years, running the gas station, Bubba had never called in sick. Another first. By Halloween of that year, Bubba was getting so tired by mid-Saturday afternoon that he'd wait behind the wheel while I got out and bargained for junk. By Thanksgiving, he wore out before noon when sleighs appeared on front lawns and fake snow on Douglas firs. Bubba stayed home and I drove to the VW bus alone up and down the peninsula. Sometimes at the flea market, Afghan acquaintances made remarks about Bubba's weight loss. At first, they were complimentary. They even asked the secret of his diet, but the queries and compliments stopped when the weight loss didn't. But when the pounds kept shedding and shedding, and his cheeks hollowed, and his temples melted, and his eyes receded in their sockets. Then, one cool Sunday, shortly after New Year's Day, Bubba was telling a lampshade to a stocky Filipino man while I rummaged in the VW for a blanket to cover his legs with. "Hey man, this guy needs help," the Filipino man said with alarm. I turned around and found Bubba on the ground. His arms and legs were jerking. "Comac," I cried, "somebody help." I ran to Bubba. He was frothing at the mouth, the foamy spill soaking his beard. His upturned eyes showed nothing but white. People were rushing to us. I heard someone say seizure, someone else yelling, "Call 911." I heard running footsteps. The sky darkened as a crowd gathered around us. Bubba's spittle turned red. He was biting his tongue. I kneeled beside him and grabbed his arms and said, "I'm here, Bubba. I'm here. You'll be alright. I'm here." As if I could soothe the convulsions out of him, talk them into leaving. My Bubba alone, I felt a wetness on my knees. I saw Bubba's bladder had let go. "Shh, Bubba John, I'm here. Your son is here." The doctor, white-bearded and perfectly bald, pulled me out of the room. I want to go over your father's in those pictures. I looked like cross-sections of a big walnut riddled with tennis ball-shaped gray things. As you can see, the cancer's metastasized, he said. "We'll have to take steroids to reduce the swelling of his brain, and anti-seizure medications, and I'd recommend palliative radiation." "Do you know what that means?" I said I did. I become conversant with cancer talk. "All right then," he said. He checked the beeper. "I have to go now, but you can have me paged if you have any question." "Thank you." I spent the night sitting on a chair next to Bubba's bed. The next morning, the waiting room down the hall was jammed with Afghans, the butcher from New York, an engineer who worked with Bubba on his orphanage. They filed in and paid Bubba the respects in hushed tones, wished him a swift recovery. Bubba was awake then, grudgy and tired but awake. Mid-morning, General Clary and his wife came, so I followed. We glanced at each other, looked away at the same time. "How are you, my friend?" General Clary said, taking Bubba's hand. Bubba motioned to the ivy hanging from his arm, smiled thinly. The general smiled back. "You shouldn't have burdened yourselves, all of you," Bubba croaked. "It's no burden at all. More importantly, Do you need anything? General Tahiri said. Anything at all. I asked me like you'd ask a brother. I remembered something Baba had said about Pashtuns once. We may be hard-headed, and I know we're far too proud. But in the honor of need, believe me, that there's no one you'd rather have at your side than a Pashtun. Baba shook his head on the pillow. Your coming here has brightened my eyes. The general smiled and squeezed Baba's hand. How are you, Amir Jan? Do you need anything? The way he was looking at me, the kindness in his eyes. Nay, thank you, General Sahib. A lump shot in my throat and my eyes teared over. I bolted out the room. I looked in the hallway, by the viewing box, where the night before I'd seen the killer's face. Baba's door opened and Soraya walked out of his room. She stood near me. She was wearing a grey sweatshirt and jeans. Her hair was down. I wanted to find comfort in her arms. I'm so sorry, Amir, she said. We all knew something was wrong, but we didn't have an idea it was this. I wiped my eyes with my sleeve. He didn't want anyone to know. Do you need anything? No, I tried to smile. She put her hand on mine. Our first touch. I took it, brought it to my face. My eyes. I let it go. You probably go back inside, or father will come after me. She smiled. I should. She turned to go. Soraya? Yes? I'm happy you came. It means the world to me. They discharged Baba 2 days later. They bought a specialist called the radiation oncologist to talk Baba into getting radiation treatment. Baba refused. They tried to talk me into taking him into it, but I'd seen their look on Baba's face. I thanked them, signed their forms, and took Baba home in my Ford Tornado. That night, Baba was lying on the couch, a wolf blanket covering him. I brought him hot tea, roasted almonds, wrapped my arms around his back and pulled him much too easily. His shoulder blade felt like a bird's wing under my fingers. I pulled the blanket back up to his chest, where ribs stretched his thin, supple skin. Can I do anything else for you, Baba? Nay, Bashan, thank you. I sat beside him. Then I wonder if you'll do something for me, if you're not too exhausted. What? I want you to go to ask the General Tahiri for his daughter's hand. Baba's dry lips stretched into a smile, a spot of green on a wilted leaf. Are you sure? More than sure. More sure than I've ever been about anything. You thought it over. Yes, Baba. Then give me the phone. And my little notebook. I blinked. Now? Then when? I smiled. Okay. I gave him the phone and the little black notebook where Baba had scribbled his Afghan friends' numbers. He looked up to the Tahiris, dialed, brought the receiver to his ear. My heart was doing pirouettes in my chest. Jamila Jan, salam alaikum, he said. He introduced himself. Was much better. Thank you. It was so gracious of you to come. He listened for a while, nodded. I remember that. Thank you. Is General Sahib home? Paused. Thank you. His eyes flicked to me. I wanted to laugh for some reason, or scream. I thought of the ball of my hand. I brought the ball of my hand to my mouth and bit on it. Baba laughed softly through his nose. General Sahib, salam alaikum. Yes, much better. Yes. You're so kind. General Sahib, I'm calling to ask if I might pay you and Khanum Tahiri a visit tomorrow morning. It's an honorable matter. Yes, 11 o'clock is just fine. Until then, Khuda Hafiz. He hung up. We looked at each other. I burst into giggles. Baba joined in. Baba wet his hair and combed it back. I helped him into a clean white shirt and knotted his tie for him, noting the 2 inches of empty space between the collar button and Baba's neck. I thought of all the empty spaces Baba would leave behind when he was gone, and I made myself think of something else. He wasn't gone, not yet, and this was a good day for good thoughts. The jacket of his brown suit and the one he'd wore on my graduation hung over him. Too much of Baba had melted away to fill it anymore. I had to roll up the sleeves. I stooped and tied his shoelaces for him. The Tahiris lived in a flat, one-story house in one of the residential areas in Fremont, known for housing a large number of Afghans. It had bay windows, a pitched roof, and an enclosed front porch on which I spotted geraniums. The general's van was parked in the driveway. I helped Baba out of the Ford and slipped back behind the wheel. He leaned the passenger window. Be home. I'll call you in an hour. Okay, Baba, I said. Good luck. He smiled. I drove away. In the rear view mirror, Baba was hobbling up the Tahiri's driveway for one last fatherly duty. I paced the living room of our apartment waiting for Baba's call. 15 paces long, 10.5 paces wide. What if the general said no? What if he hated me? I kept going to the kitchen, checking the oven clock. The phone rang just before noon. It was Baba. Well, the general accepted. I let out a burst of air, sat down, and my hands were shaking. He did. Yes, but Suraya Jan is upstairs in her room. She wants to talk to you first. Okay. Baba said something to someone, and there was a double click as he hung up. Amir, Suraya's voice. Salam. My father said yes. I know, I said. I switched hands. I was smiling. I'm so happy I don't know what to say. I'm happy too, Amir. I can't believe this is happening. I laughed. I know. Listen, she said. I wanted to tell you something you have to know before. I don't care what it is. You need to know. I don't want us to start with secrets. I'd rather you hear it from me. If it will make you feel better, tell me, but it won't change anything. There was a long pause at the other end. When we were in Virginia, I came home, and she was crying. Excuse me. I heard her put the phone down, blowing her nose. Sorry, she came back on, sounding hoarse. When I came home, I saw my mother had a stroke. The right side of her face was paralyzed, and I felt so guilty. She didn't deserve that. Father moved us to California shortly after. A silence followed. How are you and your father now? I said. We've always had our differences. We still do, but I'm grateful he came for me that day. I really believed he saved me. She paused. So does what I told you bother you? A little, I said. I owed her the truth on that one. I couldn't lie to her and say that my pride, my iftikhar wasn't stung at all, that she had been with a man, whereas I had never taken a woman to bed. It did bother me a bit, but I had pondered this quite a lot in the weeks before I asked Baba to go. And in the end, the question that always came back to me was this: how could I, of all people, chastise someone for their past? Does it bother you enough to change your mind? No, Suraya, not even close, I said. Nothing you said changes anything. I want us to marry. She broke into fresh tears. I envied her. Her secret was out, spoken, dealt with. I opened my mouth and almost told her how I betrayed Hassan, lied, driven him out, and destroyed a 40-year relationship between Baba and Ali. But I didn't. I suspected there were many ways in which Suraya Tahiri was a better person than me. Courage was one of them. This concludes our reading from of The Kite Runner from Off the Bookshelf. Your reader has been Hibahan. Thank you. Naham.